Welcome to If the Public Only Knew, the show that pulls back the curtain on what it really takes to build and lead a business. Host Gary Cinderbrandt sits down with some of today's most dynamic CEOs, founders, and leaders to dig into their origin stories, hard-earned lessons, and the missteps that nearly derailed it all. These are unfiltered, no-hype conversations designed to inspire, challenge, and fuel your own journey. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
Welcome back to If the Public Only Knew. Normally, when I introduce one of my guests, I can have a fair degree of clarity and precision. Except in this case, I'm going to bail early with Catherine Bell because she's done so many things, most of them cool. I would say that it's a terminal case of serial entrepreneurship. And as some of you who are entrepreneurs, you might be recovering entrepreneurs. I think Catherine is well in the throes of it. Prior to starting the recording, we were comparing some notes, and we both, I think we share more than just one thing in common, especially as it relates to the human condition. As many of you know, in wealth management, I am a huge believer in advisor know thyself before you go out and try and know anybody else. I think Catherine looks at her work in a lot of the same way. I've approached things from Carl Jung's perspective, looking at underlying archetypes, kind of the dark shadows that gather us all. What fascinates me initially about everything I want to talk about, Catherine, with you, is you're approaching it in a similar way using Enneagrams.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're out there, but why don't you take me from wherever you want to start to what you're doing now and see if we can weave a story about the human condition and connecting using kind of this enneagrammatic, I'm not even sure if that's a word, approach. Anyway, Catherine Bell, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your deep work because it's needed, I think, more than ever. I think it's time to bring our humanity back, less automaticity, less of the sleepwalking, and more making our unconscious conscious. And let me give you some data, Gary, on why. We have about 60,000 thoughts a day. 85% are repeating. 95% are negative. How many people are actually conscious that this is the way they go about their days?
I would say that the number's probably hovering around zero.
Right. So, the invitation for everybody listening to us is to get more conscious about our thoughts and to follow the threads and perhaps to begin with a positive intention. Perhaps each of us should have a vision for our own lives as much as organizations have a vision for the collective. How could we possibly have collective visions if we don't have individual visions? And in doing so, we can help make our unconscious more conscious, which is very Jungian, which is where, to me, where the gold is. When we start to pay attention to who we are, what our inner landscape is and what's really happening, I believe we become more awake and we can be more deliberate and have more free choice. And that's a whole interesting thing with the whole concept of free choice, because how much free choice do we really have? And so the Enneagram it's a series of 9 archetypes. And it shows the way we're on the path, we're off the path, and we're somewhere in between. It is such a powerful process map, Gary, to help us understanding our humanity. And then we work with teams and do create team maps so they understand what the collective's unconscious and conscious bias is towards as well. So we work on, and then we work it one-on-one. So let's say you're a financial planner and you're meeting with a client. Do you understand what your archetype is? Do you understand what the client's archetype is? And do you understand where the synergy can be, where the energy can be? Also, as you brought up the shadow, because the shadow is very interesting. I think we must go into shadow to kind of really like unearth our goodness We cannot escape it. We cannot escape it. I've had just recently a series of really kind of traumatic events, but those traumatic events have caused me to be even more fierce about what I do because they brought up so much stuff. Like I had a knee replacement because I injured I'm very into sports, Gary. Knee replacement. I had a friend die 2 days later. Then I had
Mm.
another friend collapse with me while we were going to the movie theater. Then I had another friend's daughter become unwell. They're all fine. Those people, the one who passed is also fine. But it caused me these, anytime we go through situations like this, it causes us, we can either bow away or we can go right into what's activating in us, what's happening with us. And the Enneagram shows us what are our proclivities, what are our archetypes. And I believe everybody has an Enneagram DNA. It's based on, from what I know, very ancient wisdom from ancient Egypt. It's based on Pythagorean theorem. It's based on the vibration of numbers. And I do think the future of work is going to be more about resonance, vibration, and energy. So let's talk about these 9 archetypes. And maybe, Gary, you can see what you relate to or don't relate to. We have all of the 9 core Enneagram points within us. So 3 are identified in our body or in our gut center. And these have to do with anger. And they also have to do with our ability to do things, not do things, action, inaction, motion. It's when we flare red, this is our belly center being activated. These 3 types are the 8, which is the challenger. The challengers are our strategic thinkers, our visionaries, the people who like to make things happen. But underneath the making things happen is a disconnection from the heart. And they do not prefer to be vulnerable. They do not prefer to share their feelings. Eights prefer to have the tough look, to be tough and resilient, and I can figure things out no matter what without really connecting with the heart. So each one of these, it's like the yin, the yang, we've all got these pieces to us. So that's the 8, the challenger. I'm just giving a high level summary. The creative moment is all about the Enneagram as a portal to how do we become more creative. So that's the next book, which is being published by Penguin Random House. Then there's the 9, the peacemaker. And the peacemaker is those individuals who just want to keep the peace. They don't want to upset the apple cart. But in not upsetting the apple cart, they're suppressing their anger. So then all of a sudden they volcano and they get super, super, super angry. And their opinions aren't really shared because they're just so busy, Gary, just keeping the peace. La, la, la. Then there's the 1, which is the reformer. And the reformer are the red penners of the world. They see everything that can possibly go wrong, like not go wrong. They see everything that's not right. They walk into a room and be like, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. They're the financial planner that they get their document, they'll notice everything that's wrong first. So that's the 8, 9, and 1. Challenger,
Mhm.
peacemaker, reformer. Then we move to the heart center, 2, 3, 4. And there's a lot of CEOs who are like, Kath, don't talk about this too much because getting this is like getting a secret code to the universe. It really is. It's changed organizations, and organizations have thrived based on using this enneagram, the enneagram. So next is the 2 through 4, which is the heart, which has to do with image. It has to do with feeling, emotion. And the 2 is the helper. And these are the people like at Thanksgiving, Gary, they'll be the people who get everything ready and ask you what you want and bring you your drink. Like that's the helper archetype. And what they forget is that sometimes they need to say no. So their shadow is they don't say no. And they do not have to give to be loved. That they are loved for their brokenness, they are loved for their humanity. They do not have to give to other people to actually love. The next is the achiever. And these are the people who like to go for gold. They are the people who also are very good human doings because they will do to get the gold star. And they often can lose connection to their heart. So, what does success mean if you have no real relationships? What does success mean if there's no connection to self? They forget the gold of their own heart in the relentless pursuit of success. Then the four, which is called the individualist. And these are the four and the five, I think, are portals for organizations because I did a study of 1,000 leaders and less than 6% fell in the four and the five. The four are the individualists. By the way, I think Young was a nine. The individualists, because he had access to the collective unconscious, and it's very nine. But we can talk more about that later. The four, the individualists, are Alanis Morissette, Johnny Depp's of the world, the deep, deep purple people, like the people who just like can spout off the depths of human emotion. What they don't realize is that it's okay to be one of many people, that
Right.
you're not solely an individual. We operate always in relationship. Then the next, so that's the heart center, helper, achiever, and individualist. Five, head center, investigator, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking's of the world. These are people who go deep and go typically into one area that they're interested in. Deep, deep, deep thinkers. The head types, five, six, and seven, all have to do with anxiety and thinking things through. And it's, people say, well, we don't lose we should get out of our heads. No, I think we need to be in our heads more to actually think things through, not just kind of do the automatic. So next is the six. I call the six the either the pathfinder or loyalist, and these are the people
Hmm.
who can't help but worry, and they love to scenario plan. Super funny, and they always can see. They'll see the challenges in terms of what could go wrong in any situation. If there was more six in the world, if there was more acceptance of six, I don't think COVID would have happened because they would have had it wrapped up with a bow because they had scenario planned it,
That's true.
right? Like this is like but this constant, they're not happy without worrying. So there's a real shadow around that. And then last but not least is the enthusiast. And these are the Pied Pipers. These are the people who are just joyous, big picture planners, have so many ideas. Their shadow is they can't get things done because they're so busy planning ideas, ideas, ideas. So, and these all of these nine archetypes are linked to each other. So you can see the way you go under stress, under health, and how you integrate. You can integrate your different pieces. And once you know this, you know that you can embody all of the different 9 points. You don't have to go on automatic default.
So let me interrupt there just for a moment. So when you look at Jung's work, Jung has the archetypical wheel, and most humans are going to fall into obviously one archetype, possibly even two or three. Those traits will cross over. In speaking to Jungian therapists, their default mode, if they can't place you on the wheel, is you're a sociopath or narcissistic personality disorder. They just won't treat you
Mm,
because there's absolutely no awareness of self whatsoever.
mm.
Now, when I look at using the Enneagram model, where you've got interrelationships between all nine, that would not apply.
Your point
Or
is
would it?
it does apply, Gary.
Okay,
It's
tell me.
very your question is very important. We have one dominant type,
Okay.
and we first must understand our own dominant type.
Could
And what,
sociopathy be a dominant type?
well, I don't study that. I don't know that. I don't know that.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that. However,
Okay.
we all have one dominant point, and unless you can understand your dominant point, you can't understand the rest of it.
Okay.
And you can never get out of your basic dominant point. And there's nine
Interesting.
levels of health within each of the different Enneagram points. So you'll show up. Different Enneagram points will show up differently. When you're healthier, you have more freedom. When you're unhealthier, you're more locked into your patterns. You're more locked into your archetype. And you don't even you're sleepwalking, you're on automatic, you do what you do every day, and you don't see any other possibility Back to those 60,000 thoughts a day, 85%
Yeah.
reflecting, 95% negative. And I don't want anyone sleepwalking because it doesn't have to be that way.
You make reference to something else that I've done a lot of reading about, um, which crosses, you could say, from the metaphysical to the physical. In the reticular formation in your brain, there's an area of your brain called the reticular activation system. It basically acts like a big flashlight. You talk about 60,000 thoughts. Those 60,000 thoughts are comprised of 11 million pieces of information, all flying around your head. But we only have the ability to concentrate on 11 of them at any one time. So it's the concept of, you talk about self-awareness. If you can't make what we're discussing or what anyone feels is important center of mind, noticeably important on a daily basis, change is very hard. And sometimes, one of the best examples of it is if you decide that you're going to buy a new car, you're going to buy a four-wheel drive Mustang, and you want to get the car in baby blue. Well, the odds are next time you're out and about, you're going to start noticing different colors of that model car because it's your focus. It becomes important to you, where you could have noticed thousands of Mustangs over the past year or two and not paid any attention to it at all. So there is that awareness, but there also has to be a degree of intentionality. So how do we go from you're using an enneagrammatic approach, helping people kind of understand where they are, where their dominant characteristics are? How do we get that into the present and utilize that discovery, however you want to phrase it, of it's important that I lead myself, it's important I'm aware of who I am. How do we take that out into our daily lives?
Mm. I believe that everyone should have a personal vision and also have aims. And using that, your car example is a perfect one of the blue car and noticing blue cars. Well, all of a sudden, if we have an intention, we'll start noticing where we're placing our attention to follow our intention. So I believe everyone should have a personal vision that they repeat many times a day to themselves to almost hijack our negativity bias so that we can become more whole as human beings. And then ultimately, it's what is the smallest thing we can do every day? So, what are we doing to pattern interrupt? Am I going to brush my teeth with my left hand and repeat my vision so that it's interrupting the pattern of who I am? And doing those, or if we see the color red, we stop, sense our bodies, sense the vision, our vision in our bodies before moving forward. We need to interrupt the patterns to begin to notice the synchronicities that are always happening around us. And when synchronicities are happening, the universe is giving us a wink. And so, unless we stop and really notice, we'll miss all of those symbols.
So let's
And
take that down to the
yeah,
practical.
yeah,
You're coming in, you're working with a leader of a large company
hmm,
that is successful by the outside, miserable on the inside, completely out of touch with what's going on. Whatever vision he had to build the company probably
yeah,
is long in the rearview mirror. He's got investors he's got to deal with. He's got shipping problems he's got to deal with. He hasn't taken a vacation. His kids don't know him. His wife wonders, what happened to my husband? How do you go and take someone like that who clearly is in distress
yeah.
and start to walk them back to this place of self-awareness where they can become much more whole?
Gary, I can't tell you how many leaders have told me that they go into their parking garage and they cry.
Yeah.
They're crying in their parking garage because life has no meaning. And so for me, um, life is full of meaning and everything is meaningful. So working with CEOs like this is we do a lot of work around what is your, first of all, people don't even know what really leadership is. So I train people on what does it mean to be a transformational leader, an awakening leader? What does that mean? Train, do Enneagram tests. Like, where are you on this wheel? What does that mean to you? And what does that mean actually mean to your life and how you show up as a leader? We create personal vision, and we often survey other people to help them get insight. And for some people, the personal vision comes right away. For other people, it takes years. So it very much depends on the leader. And then from there, we map out, okay, well, what are the things you actually need to give your time, energy, and attention to actually live into your personal vision? And can you sense your personal vision in this moment? So we create this kind of emerging future. And it's been a life changer for people. They stop crying in the parkades. And to some of Viktor Frankl's work in Man's Search for Meaning, everything becomes more meaningful and more luminous and more alive and vibrant because they have set a clearer intention for their lives, their worlds, their families, their colleagues, and how they work. And yet, we're not taught to do this in school, um, in business school, Gary. And yet, I think it's the most important thing.
No, in fact, some of the greatest leaders that we've seen dropped out of college. I mean, um, when I look at the largest change agent, I would say in the past 40 or 50 years, from a practical standpoint, I've got to look at Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Jobs, for all from the outside, was a miserable human being. He was totally driven, but he had one thought, and he devoted his life to it. If you figure out what the needs of the consumer will be, and you build backwards from there, you can't go wrong. And he didn't create a company, he created a following.
Hmm.
And if you ever listen to Simon Sinek, who is a very, very interesting guy to listen to, he'll talk about describing the experience of Apple versus everything else, where the tech does a lot of the same things, but the feeling people have around the Apple product because it was built from the needs of the consumer backwards.
Hmm.
It's just not something you can stay away from. I was an IBM guy for a lot of years, and finally cut over to Apple, and I was like, what took me so long?
Yeah.
Because it was purpose built for a consumer as opposed to, hey, look how cool our technology is. Um, I feel badly. I wish he was still here because he was one of the true latter-day visionaries. You can
Hmm.
talk about the internet and everything else, but the world's a different place without the iPhone.
Yeah.
Um, I had a guest on my show some time ago um, who was fascinating. Tatiana Mamou, PhD anthropologist, cultural anthropologist, did senior work for Microsoft, Google, and every tech company out there. And her role was to connect the tech to the humanity, to the human condition. And she had a really interesting comment. She said there has never been cultural evolution without accompanying technology. And I think that where you are right now embodies that because the technology of the human condition is technology. The ability to put these things together, the ability to look at Carl Jung or look at Enneagram, grammatic stuff, or anyone that's thought about this. And I take it back to the CEO crying in the parking lot. What a tragedy. Why? And
Why?
it's like dog catches car. What happens then? It's not good.
No, no. And it ripples out, right? Like we all affect each other and our interconnectedness and our connection. So we need to pay attention. I often use the ripple model as an example. So when we awaken ourselves, we awaken our relationships, our teams, our organizations, and community. If we're sleepwalking, we put everything to sleep wherever we're walking.
Do you find, Catherine, that if you were dealing with that CEO that's has done great things up till then, is it a question of just emptying that bucket of garbage that's holding them back and letting them rediscover what made them what they thought they wanted to be in the first place? I mean, what is that process like? Walk me through that.
It is like
The crying
Michael,
CEO.
it is like Michelangelo's David. Like we're all Michelangelo's David. We're all this gold. However, we have so much clay on us so much societal expectation, so much family expectation, so much history expectation, so much. We're all carrying these bags with us and also these stickers with us of um, who we're expected to be. So it's a process of, like Michelangelo, David, of
Get rid of
dismantling.
everything that's not David.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get rid of everything that's not us and be more free and expressive. And I truly believe we all are the puzzle pieces and we need to come together. It's in knowing what puzzle piece we are. And a lot of people don't know what their puzzle piece to humanity is, what they're in service to, what they're here to contribute, because it's that connection where meaning is found. And we are never operating in isolation. And I would really encourage people to go so much deeper. Like this weekend, I was in a retreat in Colorado at Terra Mandala on the fierce feminine Sima Muka. And she's the lion-headed Dakini, the queen of the Dakinis. Well, what do I have to learn about the queen of Dakinis? I have a lot to learn from the queen of the Dakinis. So it's like, how do we work with all of these different archetypes so that we can figure out what puzzle piece we are? And then, Gary, it's no accident that you and I have been put together on this podcast. Like we're different puzzle pieces that are coming together to contribute something new. And then in our connection, something new is being transformed. I've never talked about archetypes before on any podcast, and I've been on a lot of
Hmm.
podcasts. But it's because of you that all of a sudden we're talking more about archetypes. And isn't that fascinating? And there's a freshness to it. So what is our CEO archetype? And what's interesting is the highest performing teams are those that are the most diverse in terms of thinking. So how do we welcome that into the table? How do we bring more of the five, four and five and us out, the individualist and investigator? And the nine is very important because the nine, which Young was, has huge access to the collective unconscious, and also nine vibrates at a different frequency than any other number. So how do we actually pay attention also to the numbers in our world? So like you work with financial planners. What is the energy of the numbers in our financial plans? And are we paying attention to that? Because they all hold a frequency. The only truth is numbers.
Well, math is the only universal language.
Yeah,
Two and two never equals purple.
right.
It's always going to come out the same. There are so many thoughts that I have as you're speaking. One thing that's always fascinated me is the progression of a wealth management professional that early in their career, aggressively pursues new business because they have to. They're just not going to make it unless they do. But somewhere around year 5 to 7 or 8, where they recognize they're going to not, not have the keys changed at their office, they're going to get back in, they slow down and they take all the wisdom that they've accumulated over that period and they don't deploy it to getting better. So instead of, maybe bringing in 10 relationships per year, it goes to 6 or 5 or 4, or it goes by happenstance. And a lot of it has to do, believe it or not, with what I would refer to as PTSD. Because when you're first starting, you have all these great hopes and dreams, you're going to hear no, orders of magnitude more than you're going to hear yes.
Mm,
And those no's are emotional.
mm,
Emotional memory lives in a different part of your brain. It lives in that front part of your brain, and there's no clock up there. That's why PTSD is so hard to treat. So you can remember the worst experiences of your life pretty easily. But most
mm,
people can't remember what they had for lunch a week ago on Tuesday. But
mhm,
you can remember, you think about it, there's certain memories that don't go away. They live elsewhere. So we're always fighting that inner shadow, if you will, that negative shadow. And it's hard to get rid of. I think it's one of the reasons that they have found therapeutic cannabis to be helpful in
mm,
treating PTSD. There have been experiments done in a variety of ways. But I'm coming back to that crying CEO because in that in that moment where they're just so upset and so depressed, all they're thinking about is the trauma, not just of what they had to do to build it, but the loss they're feeling for the rest of their life. And it's so front of mind for them.
Mhm.
How do we get rid of it? How do we kind of carve our way out of that and recognize that the best might still be out there, but there's a lot of weight back there that's not going to time out anytime soon?
This just flashed across my mind screen, so I'm going to mention it. One of the things I have CEOs do is write their eulogy
Hmm,
so that they can die before they die and they can remember that every moment counts because we never know when it's going to be our last breath.
it's true.
It's rawly true, and we often don't want to face it.
Sobering thought.
Yeah. And then what does that mean in terms of our relationships when we go up the elevator and go to the front desk and see our colleagues? Or when we go home, we enter the door to our home, our loved one is there, our kids may be there. How do we want to show up? If we were gone the next day, how do we want to be remembered?
You are hitting on so many things. I could talk to you for hours because there's so many of these things that I think deeply about, that I've worked with other people about. Um, the answers are always iterative. They're never final. There's always more to learn, which I think is probably a trait you and I both share. Catherine, thank you so much for joining today. What a fascinating conversation. I'd love to have you back on at some point to continue, but just terrific. How do people find you? And tell me about your book and how people can get in touch.
So awakenedcompany.com is the best place to go to find us. Sign up for our newsletter. We're really practical. We provide a lot of practical advice in our newsletter, so please sign up to that. The next book, so Awakened Company. I don't know if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle, Gary, but
No, I'm not.
he wrote The Power of Now. Anyway, Namaste published my first book, which is called The Awakened Company, who also published Eckhart Tolle's book. You would love it. You would love that book. And also read The Awakened Company. It's about how do we bring this consciousness to our organizations. And the next book coming out is The Creative Moment. And that will be, let's have a conversation about that as our next conversation,
Will
Gary.
you reach out to me before it's published and we can come back on and talk about it?
Yes, for sure. Because creativity and financial planning and the archetypes, like that would be a super interesting,
That would be
juicy.
super cool.
Yeah.
Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Just
you,
just a
Gary.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you. Thank
You've been
you.
talking with Catherine Bell. I don't even know how to describe you. Iconoclast, woman of the world, and of this world at least, and maybe some others that we haven't found out about yet. But it's been a true pleasure. You've been listening to If the Public Only Knew. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to If the Public Only Knew. Don't forget to follow the show and share it with anyone who's ready for the real raw stories behind the business successes. Join Gary next time for another powerful conversation that will leave you inspired and ready to take action.